So good evening, everyone. Myself, Shweta Jain, Regional Council member. Welcome you all on Decade series. So today we have come up with another interesting topic, how AI, artificial intelligence, can help us in legal drafting. And we have with us WRC Chairman CA Arpit Kabra, Secretary WRC CA Saurabh Ajmera, Speaker of today's session, Mr. Suhas, and Coordinator, Mr. Dinesh Tejwani. I welcome everyone, but before starting the formally session, I request everyone to please put your hand on your heart for the ICI motto.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you, everyone. Friends, artificial intelligence can be a valuable tool in the field of legal drafting since it's offering several benefits to the legal professional and organization. So AI powered software can automate the creation of legal documents, contracts, and maybe agreements. So this reduce the time spent on the repetitive task and minimize errors also. And we can get access to wide range of legal templates and clauses through AI. So to know more about, we have our today's speaker, and but before handing over to him, since this year we are organizing a lot of program of bit related to technology, and some more important other topics are also there. So under our dynamic leader, C. Arpit Kabra ji. So I request to our secretary to please quickly go through us the all initiative and activities at WRC. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Shweta ma'am. First of all, I like to congratulate you for organizing such an innovative program using AI tool in legal drafting, which is need of the hour, you can say. And as you given me a very limited time, I will cover the pride. This year, as ICI is entered in the 75th year as our existence, and we are celebrating that pride in a different way. So where we are saying P stand for perform, and then R stand for relearn, and I, that is the innovation, which is our core. In innovation, the technology is playing very important role. And in this series, we are organizing tech series each and every weekend, you can say weekdays program, and we are covering very innovative topics in this. You can say Power BI, Python, and all our stuffs we are covering. So my request to all the members, please join on a regular basis all the virtual series which we are organizing. And then D stand for distinguish ourselves, where we are organizing very specific program. We have organized for insurance sector. Now we are planning for pharma and banking sector also. And then E, enrich our ecosystem, in which you can say we are in the era of social audit, and where 3 P's are very important. We have to understand first planet, then people, and then profit. So we are organizing various program in ESG stuffs also. And friends, this year we are hosting a very big program under the banner of ICI, that is GloPay, on 24th, from 24th November to 26th November at Gandhinagar. And this is like a workout program kind of things. This will be the same like that. So I request all the members, please do register for GloPay and attend the different legal program and take the benefit of networking. With this, I thank Shweta ma'am for giving me an opportunity. And this year we are very lucky to have very dynamic and innovative chairman with us, who always believe in innovation. So I thank Chairman Arpit Kabra sir to you.
So thank you, Saurabh, for giving us the highlights. Now time to hear directly from our chairman. So I request to our chairman WRC, please.
Thank you very much. And believe me, at WRC, we are making an attempt to reach that last member, whoever, wherever he or she may be. How can we drive an impact using technology to each and every member as per their set of expectation, as per their set of understanding? Believe me, we have received under, all of the council, the entire council is working tremendously round the clock only to ensure and interact with members so that we can hear from them what they want. And everything and anything that is happening at WRC is based on some or the other brainstorming, some or the other expectations, some or the other requirements of our members. And today is none different. Everyone has been talking about use case programs for AI, chat GPTs, and so many things. And whenever it comes to technology, we've got a handful of people around with us. One of them right now, and I'm sharing the screen with Dinesh Tejwani sir. I think anytime and every time we need any help on technology, he's one person whom we go to and he never disappoints. He always comes out with something wonderful and says that, look, do you know what's happening on legal world? You know what's going to happen? In fact, the idea of making an open AI platform by ourselves, feeding it with all the tax updates and income tax submissions, and then look at the magic of drafting an entire submission using recent case laws is possible once you go through this session today. I think use of AI can be tremendous. It is said that the way you want to feed them, they'll give you back. So how much ever information you want to feed them in their SQL, in the database, you put it, and probably you will get a wonderful, the style of submission that you want. Every chartered accountant, every member would have a different style of submission. Now, the more you will give your style, probably the chat GPT will answer in the same manner as well. So it's all about what do you give, you get it back. And this maxim is again proven by even technology. So I welcome Suhas. Suhas, thank you for accepting our invitation and coming here and joining us for this program. For all the members, I'm sure you must have heard this, but since some of them who have joined us, these are various initiatives at WRC. On a slide that we have put it for you. All of them are self-explanatory. Tech Edge is what we are doing today. Wednesdays we have WOW series, Niryat series. We just had a wonderful program with Abu Dhabi. Very soon we are coming with Muscat. 25th we are coming with Singapore, and we are going to have another event with Canada. I think please look forward to these events. US, we are also shaping up an entire conference on US based accounting and taxation, and all the chapters of US, as Saurabh mentioned, these so many chapters outside India. We have taken an initiative under Niryat so that we could go and reach out to all these chapters, do join programs, and one breakthrough for any member who is this in program. I think our efforts are to the fullest. Gurukul Friday Fundas are again such programs. I would invite all of you to please join a program called a certificate course on executive presence and personal branding. One of those events, one of those programs which will help you create how do you brand yourself personally and create your executive presence. And from there, we have launched recently, we have just started and we are ideating a program called as Prerna. Practice redesigning, empowering to become resourceful, so to nurture and adopt best practices for CA firms. I think this is a program where we invite our women chartered accountants who have moved out of practice, who are moved out of fraternity and would like to join back, would like to come back, and we want to make them as consultants, catalysts for growth of practicing chartered accountants, CA firms. I think one of those dream projects that we all are working towards, and it has shaped up very well. I must congratulate Shweta Madam, Ketan Sayya, Saurabh for doing this wonderful program. Startup Lab, Nest Cafes, and Project Saptrishis are our other initiatives which we keep on working on day by day. So should all of you or any one of you need any place, any position, any particular point on which you can contribute to WRC or you wish to work with us, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to collaborate and ensure that we reach out and give the best to our members. With these words, thank you very much. We are coming up with two big programs. We have sub-regional conference in Surat on 13th and 14th October. I'm sure once the tax audit season is over, you'll all be entering into a long weekend till 2nd October. And from there on, we have lined up a lot of programs. One at Surat, which is Avinya, that is innovation. Avinya is the Sanskrit word for innovation, and technology is what will be served in Surat in a sub-regional conference, the WIRC Gujarat conference. And more importantly, a capital market national conference on 27-28 October at Yogi Savagra Dadar. One of its kind program, larger than life program that is being planned for all the capital market. I'm sure Nifty has crossed 20,000. Today it has crashed, but yes, the big part is it has crossed 20,000. So we'll have a lot of discussion there. Without further ado, inviting Dinesh ji to please introduce Suhas and set up the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arpit. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker. For the topic today, AI legal drafting, we could not have expected a better speaker than Suhas, who's corporate lawyer as well as a technology entrepreneur. Here's a short profile. So Suhas Baliga is a corporate lawyer with 15 years of experience advising clients in venture capital, private equity, and technology startup sectors, right from seed to unicorn. He's a graduate from National Law School of India, University Bangalore. Prior to founding Innove Law in 2012, Suhas worked with premier law firms like Luther & Luthra and Trilegal. Since 2020, Suhas's work focuses on how language processing and artificial intelligence can be used for legal drafting and review. His technology company, Lippy Labs, specializes in using AI to solve for complex document drafting and review problems in law and education. Suhas also writes Future of Law, a widely read blog in the field of law, technology, and innovation. With this small introduction, I welcome Suhas now. Everybody is eager to hear you. Welcome, Suhas.
Thank you, Dinesh sir, for this very generous introduction. And thank you, Arpit, for a very good laying the ground in terms of our topic. And to all the other panelists, everybody who has joined us, very warm welcome. And there is not so much time, but there is quite a bit that I hope to run through. And at the same time, I hope that it is accessible, and you're able to understand. And of course, we will have a question time during which we can address things where you might want more clarity or more filling in the gaps. I will share my screen. The format of this will be a presentation mostly, but there might be a few places where we go out and I show you things, either code or samples or editing or drafting work, when I will be moving into either Google Drive or or our own app or OpenAI's Playground. So with this introduction, I will start. A lot of the focus in this talk will be on generative AI. AI is a much broader topic, and of course, one of the reasons it will be generative AI is closer to the things that we do and I am familiar with. AI is an ocean in which there are so many different things. So I will be focusing on the intersection between AI and legal work, and particularly where it concerns generative AI, especially generative AI applications. I have been introduced by Dinesh sir. I'll just add a little bit of context in terms of my background. Being a corporate lawyer, my journey with technology, the current journey began in 2020, when flowing from our my experience as a corporate lawyer and running a corporate law firm, as well as looking at consulting work in general. The challenge that I felt was that a lot of the work that we do, especially where it concerns drafting and review, can be more efficient, can be more automated, can be simplified. While over the last 20 years, there has been some amount of innovation in terms of us being able to use computers and word processors, being able to do things much easier in terms of iterating documents. One of the things that, of course, I think, lawyers around the world feel is that there is, review takes a lot of time. So review is not just review in terms of looking at case law or looking at, research points, but also where it concerns documentation, such as contracts, which can be very bulky, manuals, policies, due diligence documentation, which can be very voluminous. Even in certain sectors, you have contracts which are, and which have annexures which need to be reviewed, which might be commercial and technical. So there is review problems interested us primarily, and that is how we started working on, can we try to simplify the review problem. And in 2020, when we started this, we didn't have the language models, the large language models of today, but there was progress being made in terms of, how to natural language processing, which is, the ability to use computers to identify language, identify meaning, connect concepts. So, but it was still very primitive compared to what you can do today. And this, the reason I'm telling you about this, where we were in 2020 and where we are now, is because it has been a very exciting and interesting time in this world, which we entered in 2020. We did not expect it to become so interesting over time. As we moved into 2021 and 2022, the tools that are available to us became better and better. For example, by 2021, we were working on what we call term sheet mapper, which was a document comparison tool where you were trying to identify whether there is a certain sentence that you want to find a similar sentence with similar meaning. And this is for document review. So for example, if you have a short document like a term sheet or a MOU, and then you have a set of documents, can you match the concepts in the two documents? Again, not very ambitious, but these are things that computers were not yet able to do. For example, if you had a large volume of documentation, finding a certain concept in that document, you have to run a keyword search, with words that might match. But now it was possible to start looking for, say, if you want the concept of the board of directors and you have a thick bundle of documentation, can you search through to find where the board of directors is referred to? So things like that. But at the same time, in terms of drafting and in terms of complex review, there was still much to be, done. What 2022 and 2023 have showed us is that, now we are in a place where there is usefulness of the technologies that we're seeing, and particularly the large language models and the way generative AI has evolved. In terms of context, what Dinesh sir has shared with me is that there have been AI focused, tech focused, conversations that you have had in the past. So in this session, we are going to go pretty much directly to legal review and drafting, and without any too much of an introduction, only a very basic introduction, so that we are able to set the context for this conversation. In terms of broadly how it's structured, part one is what we have been covering. I will give you a little bit more context on this, and then move on to a very quick and brief introduction on what is our sort of mental model around where language models work well for legal problems and where they don't really work well for legal problems, and how they might change in the future as well. From there, we move on to how the more specific ways in which the broad approaches you can use to use AI for legal work. There can be several approaches that you can use, and we'll talk about some of these approaches which we have found promising and which we are seeing being used. After that, we will run into a couple of demonstrations of how these approaches work. For example, how can you possibly use it for drafting? How could you use it for editing? How could you work with your own templates? Earlier, in the introduction, Arpit was talking about, the idea of being able to generate a draft based on your knowledge. How do you translate your knowledge into a format that you are is acceptable to you, which you're comfortable with, or which is based on your own precedents. This is finally the sum and substance of the problem. And in each of these, from getting from A to B, we can talk about how would this work, and where are the sort of risks that we need to be careful about. What are things that might work well, things which might be a little challenging, and where there are ways to do, what could be the ways to get around. So this is going to be the broad structure. In terms of legal documentation and legal drafting and review use cases, there are some things that we start with as the problems that we are trying to solve. See, AI it looks very magical, but then we need to be clear about where we want to what are we trying to solve. So of course there is the issue of drafting taking a lot of time. So one thing that we want to solve is reduce the amount of time. The second thing that happens is, even where you are familiar with the draft, if there are many rounds of review, there are many people giving comments, and you need to incorporate them, or it goes through several rounds of revisions, there can be a lot of reworking on the whole document. For example, you need to make one concept change, but you need to make that change across 10 places. So somebody has to sit and look at the whole thing again. Now, this can even be an opinion. For example, you draft a 5-page opinion, and then if something changes in one place, then maybe everywhere you need to change. So this can be a challenge. The third can be, you have templates and you're relying on them, but templates also make us lazy. So a lot of people, they don't read everything in the template. They just plug in what they want, and a lot of language is left over there. So you have these risks which are already there in terms of templates. Now you need to be careful about not replicating those risks. Then you have some other things which uh, are important, such as not being very conceptual about your work, and ensuring that conceptually what you do is accurate, and it's not really about form. So one of the reasons why chat gpt is so impressive is what comes out is in a very nice form, and we sometimes look at very nice form and we can get lost in terms of substance. And AI generated work therefore requires more careful review. To give you an example of this, the college that I studied in, we used to have a very good program where every 3 months, for 4 subjects, you have to write a detailed research paper. And ever since ChatGPT has released this, university has stopped this. They have stopped this whole research paper writing, and because people are using ChatGPT to write the research papers. And this is very sad, but at the same time, the challenge that the professors are facing is everybody's paper looks nice, and then you actually have to read it, understand it, and then try to see whether they're conceptually doing well or not. So it sort of fools you into a sense of comfort. So it's very important when we engage with AI. We need to be as careful as we always were. So these are the sort of problem statements we're looking at. There's one that I'm not really mentioning here, but which will come when we are talking about it, which is how do we translate, say, our knowledge into what we are doing. Knowledge could be the case law or the research. It could be latest regulations, statutes. It could be the facts that we have in a particular matter that we are looking at. It could be whatever it is. Our calculations of a certain liability which needs to be incorporated in a document. Could be anything. So how do we bring in that knowledge? That is something that we will also talk about and expand on. So so I have already sort of gone through our journey. We started with how do you identify text, you moved to how do you compare documents, and now we are looking at how do you draft and review. And it is from very unambitious to very ambitious, because that is how fast things are moving, which is why it is very important for us, whoever is engaging in this field now. It's a very exciting time, and it's also very important for us to know where we are going, what we are doing, what we are trying to do. The other context setting sort of slide, and this is the last context setting slide, is And some of these things are very, you might already know about, but I feel, it bears repeating. One is, this is something you would have discovered, which is in Chat GPT. If you look for information, you will probably get something dated, or it might be inaccurate. So by themselves, language models cannot be used for research. However, if you have a knowledge base, there is a way to use that with with language models. So merely expecting AI by itself to, find something for you is currently a difficult problem, because AI models are not able to work with a large amount of text. So be aware of, not relying on the knowledge that a language model has. Rely on it for form. And which is taking us to the previous point, form over substance. Language models are very good with form, but we have to give it the knowledge. The second thing is, don't expect language models or AI with generative AI for text as it is now to do complex reasoning and analysis. They are not very good at that. The latest and the most powerful OpenAI model, which is GPT-4, is able to do some reasoning, but before relying on it, you need to be careful. So analysis is something that a language model is unlikely to do, and something that will have to be built around. So injecting knowledge is important, and also logic, and logic either needs to be injected, or it needs to be described, or there are some ways that you can figure out how to use language models, but logic is not a strength. So a language model is basically that, it is something which has magical ability to recollect language and predict what the language should be, but it doesn't understand the language or analyze the language in any way. So knowing these things makes it easier for you to figure out, okay, where can we innovate, where can we get the quickest sort of efficiency from using generative AI now for, say, drafting and review problems. The focus here is legal drafting and review, but a lot of this works for other drafting and review as well, not strictly legal. For example, if you're writing a communication or a letter where you need to gather your thoughts, a lot of the same concepts work there as well. Any kind of structured, thoughtful, conceptual writing on a professional basis. So, and apart from this, of course, a lot of what is in this slide we have run through. But when people talk about language models being trained on a large amount of text, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will give you an accurate answer. It means that they will be able to predict text, and their job is to predict the next word. So coming to specifically, how do you get into legal drafting with this? What are the things that you need to do when you're using a language model to prepare a legal draft? So broadly, there are things. What you see on the left, knowledge injection, is what kind of inputs you need to be giving to the language model, and outputs is the things that you need to be concerned about when the language model is giving you the results. So, for example, context. The way that a professional drafts a document versus the way that chatbot writes text versus secretary writes text, and the way, say, someone who is performing, a teacher or an academic, writes, are different. So context is something that large language models need to have. So for example, you might wish to say that I am a finance professional and I am writing a letter, so that will inform the output, which is tone and voice. The voice in which a document is written. The way a contract is drafted is different from the way a letter would be drafted, or say, a diplomatic cable would be drafted. Then typically you would have to include whatever concepts, clauses, provisions you have. Now, yes, it is technically possible to have those come from outside, but they will have to come from somewhere and be fed into a language model. Same for case law, same for statutes, and also the factual background, the specific factual background that you're dealing with. It could be the content of your notice in terms of what you're putting in there, and based on your client instructions. It could be what you're required to sort of argue in a petition. These are all sort of factual matters that you need to include. And when you talk about output, you're concerned about one, like you mentioned, the tone and voice. You're concerned about the structure, and you're concerned about the style of the document. So these are things that you are concerned about. And we will get into how do you sort of address each of these issues, even in the simplest way, with what you can just try yourself using OpenAI models, for example. And in terms of drafting a document, when you think about drafting a document using a large language model, there are two approaches that you can use. One is called a chain of thought approach, and the other is a template-based approach. I'm putting it into these two broad categories, but of course, there is a little bit of nuance in template-based, which we'll get to. What is chain of thought? Chain of thought is more a conceptual way of approaching the drafting exercise. So you know that certain things need to be included, and you want to sort of build on that, and then you build the draft. Typically, a good option for a document that you haven't drafted, but where you're clear about the kind of things that need to be taken care of. And template based is where it is something that you constantly draft, and you need to generate something which is in the form that you would like to see. So that would be a template based approach, and we'll run through each of these. First is, what is chain of thought? So I told you earlier that a language model by itself is not able to analyze or figure out things, and the logic behind things, and put things together logically. That's not something that it is able to do. However, one way to make the language model do this is where you logically take it through step by step. And this is one way in which you will see that across AI use cases, people are building agents. What are agents? Agents are basically something that logically take you through the steps. So for example, an agent will say, hi, where would you like to travel to? And if you say Dubai, the next question will be, okay, what kind of hotels do you like? And you keep giving it this feedback, and then it takes all these inputs, Dubai and the kind of hotel you want, and then using that information, it generates some kind of output saying Dubai is great for beachfront hotels. So chain of thought sort of gets you to a place. So how do you do that with legal, say a legal document? You have been presented a document that you have not drafted before. For example, you've been asked to prepare a share purchase agreement. Now, some people might have prepared it in the past, some people might not have prepared it, but everybody knows that there are certain risks they are concerned about for their client. For example, you know that your client is paying for the shares, so it needs to be protecting his interests when he's buying those shares. So you could run through a kind of a logical steps here. You could say that give me the concepts that I need to cover in the share purchase agreement, and based on what is generated, then you could move to the next step saying elaborate on each of them. And once you have a draft, you might be able to also say, why don't you include this or include that? So this would be a chain of thought example. So let me show you how this could work. I'm just going to show you this on OpenAI's playground, and you can see for yourself how something like this would work. Can you see my screen, which has the playground shared?
Yes, was visible. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there's a little bit of we are going to go into this aspect of prompts, but this is how typically you would write a prompt for something like this. You would say, you are an expert legal counsel who excels at drafting legal agreements on client instructions, and functioning as a legal assistant. And here you will say, what are the provisions and clauses that are essential to a share purchase agreement. And when you do this, you get a result where it's telling you what the headings are. You get a sense of, okay, these are the things that I need to have in my contract. And when you have this, you go on to the next page, which is draft an agreement covering all of the above headings and ensure that it is elaborate and exhaustive. And when you do this, this is how your chain of thought would function. And you will see this is covering those headings and then generating a document. You will still see that you might not be very happy. There are situations where here it's writing it like a letter initially, and then it's a contract, and it is not completely in the format that you want. So this is where the value of running this around your own template becomes more useful and relevant. However, by using this approach, you are able to sort of get something which is detailed, as opposed to just asking for a share purchase agreement. And you can do experiments on this. You can just ask for a particular agreement and you will get something, versus you might want to first elaborate on what you need there. You might include certain things and then ask for an agreement, and then there'll be a certain a logic to it, and there might be things that you're concerned about which pop up when you run through these chain of thought prompts. So this is one way to do it. And of course, this might not be your dream share purchase agreement, but you have spent just two prompts. You have asked it for a set of headings, you asked it to draft it, and you're getting an organized layer. And here you can also modify. For example, I could say something like you know the same draft but with a more detailed indemnity clause. And then I have a draft which okay, now I'm having this issue of too many. So then you get a draft where say a certain clause is more detailed. So this is one approach to drafting. Now the other approach is where you go into prompts and detailed prompts, and then you structure them, you build guardrails, and we'll come to these concepts, which is the template based or the prompt based style of drafting. Now when we are drafting, what were we doing there? There we were trying to sort of use the language model to generate knowledge on concepts and structure, and then use that structure to draft. We were not really putting in any of our own knowledge, except later on in the third stage where we were saying, okay, you modify this or modify that, which might be important from our client's perspective. So how do you bring your knowledge into the language model is something that is important to sort of have context on before then you can start infusing your knowledge into the prompts, and that can of course be combined with the chain of thought approach. Now, how do you infuse knowledge into the language models? There are difficult ways to do this. For example, you can train the language model, you can fine tune it, and also you can create a very systematic database, search through that database first, and then somehow bring that into a language model. And these are all worthy problems to solve, but this is difficult. It's not always very easy to do this. And what we have noticed is even where you fine tune, you might not get the results that you like. The other approach is a simpler approach, which is you try to figure out a way to make the language model work for you, and wherever you need to bring the knowledge, you bring it in a in the most systematic way possible, where it is foolproof. For example, and I'm just many people disagree with me on this, but I think, for example, that SCC or Manupatra or Taxman, the traditional databases now, they have a fantastic search function, and nobody who's integrated AI has been able to build any search function which is better than that. However, combining that ability to find what you want and then putting that into a language model will solve most of your problems typically. So that is where I think, then you will start seeing accuracy, and whoever is able to do this is going to, find that accuracy. The other thing I was saying was, one is of course the chain of thought. But what is the other way to do it? The other way to do it now with the language models that we have, and which you can access out of the box, which you can access to build, would be having a good understanding of how prompts work and how guardrails work. So what are prompts? Prompts are basically inputs which are given to the language model, and this could be instructions. This could be language that you need to see in the draft, and this could be what we call guardrails. And we will come to this. Instructions are where, instructions are where the specific things that we are talking about come in, which is the facts of the case, and the sensitivities that you as a professional have, which need to be included in the document. There might be things you want more elaborate, things which you want less elaborate. And then, there are certain things that you might want to include in every draft, such as, here I'm saying scope of services and consideration, or, do not include a certain provision, or, refer to certain things. And you mention those things because, the language model might not have the case law. So you might have to, tell the language model that this is the case law. And I will be demonstrating this, how this prompt and guardrails work with an example. And of course, then when we come to how do we ensure that, what do I mean by guardrails? Guardrails are things that ensure that the draft doesn't go all over the place. So for example, when you looked at the playground generation, you would have seen that, it started off like a letter. And you don't want it to start off as a letter. So when you start seeing this kind of input, you start building these guardrails, saying it should be in the format of an agreement, which is this, or, which is of this type. And you try to ensure that, as much as possible, this randomness in the language model goes away. So what kind of guardrails can you include? You can include what are the standard provisions you want. And of course, I'll show you how this works. What are the, things that you absolutely feel that that document should have? So for example, you can say, I need to have indemnities, I need to have consequences of breach, or I need to have something which, is there in our templates. The second might be that, you are on one side of a transaction. You're representing the seller. So you want something which is friendly to the seller. You don't want something which is friendly to the buyer. It might be, again, there is contextual. So, you want it drafted in a certain way, which we spoke about. You are a chartered accountant. You are not a diplomat. So the way you write is different from that. The other thing we have noticed is jurisdiction, also very useful, which is which country or which part of the world this document is relevant in. Because of the large amount of text that OpenAI has trained its models on, it can distinguish between a document which looks like something written in India versus something written somewhere else. So there are changes in tone and voice and style based on where you are saying the document is drafted for. And you will notice this. You can say draft a share purchase agreement. The way it looks in India is different from the way it looks in the UK. And sometimes you'll see that, it's sort of bringing the Indian context into the SPA, even though, it doesn't need to know that. So it's like a box of chocolates and we have to exploit it. So, and then there are standard things, boilerplate, like, you might have a bunch of things that are there in every draft that need to be there in every draft and you want to include it. So these are things that, you might want to sort of include to reduce the randomness and bring what generative AI is generating into the form that you need. So I'll show you how, something like this works, because, what we have done in terms of our product is try to design a bunch of what we call scripters, which are, which is a form you fill to generate a draft. And what is happening behind under the hood is the prompt is taking care of what needs to go in and also the guardrails. So let me show you how, this works for say a service agreement. So first I'll show you how it looks on our app, and then I'll show you what is happening under the hood. So, you see what is actually going to OpenAI, how is this working, why is it working the way it is. Then I think that will give you some understanding of what this prompt and guardrails really mean. Like, how do you define a prompt that works? So, if I were to, and of course, this is a link to our app. I'll share all of this. Say you were to, say that, you want to draft a service agreement, and I have to sign in. And so what you're seeing here is, these are the fields that we thought, okay, these are all contextual things, factual things that we need to include. So, for example, you might say that, we want to create BFX and design for RRR, and you have whatever else you think might be relevant, like governing law might be India, jurisdiction might be Surat, and you might want to include something, and the more you include, the more context that goes into the draft. So this could be an annual payment of INR 1 crore taxes, for example, or excluding taxes. So when you say submit, and I'm using the equivalent of 3.5 here, you will see a draft, and the draft, you will see that it has certain standard provisions, and then it has certain things which it is incorporated from whatever you have provided. And we will quickly look at this draft, and once we look at the draft, we can then go back to see how was this draft generated, like what is going on behind this, like apart from just the fields and whatever you have filled. Because people get bored waiting, we are trying to figure out what to do here. So we have put in some jokes. Well, we are always open to ideas. So you will see here that the service agreement has been generated, and it's sort of brought in the context of visual effect design services for RRR, and it's building up on that basis. There's a lot of, you will see provisions which are okay. Then 1 crore has been incorporated here, and it says subject to deductions for applicable taxes because it is inclusive. So you'll see there's a bit of elaboration that it does based on the concepts that you're including. It doesn't just replicate that, which is what really distinguishes this kind of a approach from just fill in the blanks. You can say I can just fill in the blanks, I can put 1 crore there, I can do this there. Then you will have to sort of draft this out and think through certain things when you're making changes. And then you see it has this reps and warranties, it has breach and consequences of breach, where it is addressing the intellectual property question, which is usually relevant in this kind of agreement. And then going on with a whole bunch of boilerplate provisions, governing law, laws of India, it says here, and courts in Surat. So this is how the draft has been generated, and you can see that your inputs are there, but there's a whole bunch of other things. Now let's go and look at how does this look in the behind the hood. What is what is going on here? So what are the guardrails that we have included? Where is the context? So when this was being generated, we were sending this to the language model, essentially. We were sort of putting in whatever you gave us into the relevant place, but there's a whole bunch of other things which you are not asked for, which are standard, which are also going in. For example, you see here the severability, there's waiver, notices on independent contractor, specific performance, and we have not given these clauses in full. We have done something similar to the chain of thought, where we are giving it the headings. We're saying, okay, these are the headings, you cover it in whichever way you want. Now, this can be as detailed as you want. So, for example, we wanted, for example, the reps and warranties to have certain things. And, we have sort of made that in more detail, saying for a service recipient, it should include this. For a service provider, it should include at least these things. And these are irrespective of what you put in or don't put in. So this is the prompt, where you are bringing in things that you want to see in the final draft in every draft, irrespective of what kind of service agreement you are drafting. The other thing that is very important is the context. So you're saying you're a qualified lawyer, expressly draft detailed contracts. It should cover certain ingredients which you have given above. You have to elaborate. It should be standard. All other terms customarily covered should be included. So, we are setting out a certain context here so that every time a draft is generated, it's not some random, it doesn't sound like a sailor has written it or a diplomat has written it. And, then we say this is the task to generate a detailed task. And you provide a draft of the agreement suitably titled, numbered, divided into paragraphs with headings. So this is what is going on behind this. And then the question arises, okay, I might not want to have these kind of representations, so then you change them. You might want to have something more detailed, you do this. Within certain limitations, a lot of this works. And the limitation being that, language model can only accept a certain number of, tokens, words. And now they keep expanding it. We have, 16K and 32K. And now we have one which is coming up now, I think 80K. So being able to accept larger, documents is prompts is something that language models are increasingly being able to do. So now when I show you the next slide, it will make sense. So what are the reasons behind, having certain number of fields? So, you saw certain number of fields, payment and governing law, and, certain things that we included. That is usually matching with where you feel that in every situation you need to infuse knowledge. It might be because in that assignment or that client, there'll be some changes. But where it does not change in every assignment, you can actually, like we have under the hood, captured a certain bunch of things that need to always be captured, that can always be captured. So you need to figure out the balance between saving time and having, to include new information every time, especially where things are settled. The other reason why you still need to have those fields and you can't just tell the language model, you generate this, is because, you care about accuracy. You need to have certain provisions in the document if it has to be accurate. If it is, and of course, there are things that you can also do here. For example, you can make it friendly to one party or the other. The one that we have is fair to both parties. But you can also have this option where you say, okay, I want it to be fair to one party or the other, or, leaning towards that. So those kind of things make a difference. And of course, the guardrails that I showed you, guardrails were, you need to be elaborate, you need to stick to the headings that we have provided. We have inserted all those clauses which need to be there every time based on our templates. So these are guardrails, not allowing the draft to go all over the place. You give instructions, and then the language model can get very excited and start doing things which are going beyond what you typically want to see in the document. So, so this is how we are making this app work. So every one of the what we call scripters, we call this a service agreement scripter, which is generating a service agreement. Every one of the drafts here has the same logic going in. If you want to make say lease agreement, the same logic goes in. There are certain things which we feel that is dependent on a transaction, and of course you as a law practice or a firm or an office might feel that there are only certain things which change, so many things don't change. So this is not necessarily which is why we made everything optional, but in a very focused sort of a way you might need only 3 of these or 4 of these. But at the same time, if you want to go all in and provide more context, it just makes the draft more elaborate, more accurate. So most of this, most of what you see in terms of what we have done, where you have to generate a contract or a particular kind of agreement, is in the background doing similar things as here. It is going into what are the concepts that need to be included, whether the user wants it or not, and what are the concepts that come from the user that need to be included, which are also coming into this. So this is how this interaction, very simple interaction with the language model happens. And this interaction can be more complex, can include more prompts, can include more than one. But fundamentally, what you're doing is this: you are capturing a combination of your knowledge and leveraging the language model to bring more detail and structure into your work. So, just to summarize, when you are trying to use what we call a scripter or a template generator like this, you have to have your knowledge. You can use your templates. You will have to figure out what are the input fields that are important to you, which change in each transaction. And then there is also the little bit more complicated issue, which doesn't have much to do with generative AI, but formats like PDF, docx. These are things that sometimes you need to figure out. Okay, how do I convert this into whatever format I need? Sometimes there are challenges. Some like docx are easy, Excel is easy, but there are certain other things which might be difficult. So, but at the same time might be important depending on how you generate your work. So in terms of the generative AI legal assistant use case, what else can we do? So we talked about this niche. The first point here in this slide, which is focused inputs and drafting sort of niche agreements, is one thing that we have covered. Now, if you want to sort of complicate this further, there are two logical next steps. One is, can you use AI to edit? And then if you can use AI to edit, the logical next step is also that you can use AI to work with your own templates, because that is one step forward. So we come to the editing aspect. To be very honest with you, this is at the very basic level, it's simple. For example, say you have a sentence. You have a sentence saying, we attended a talk on Tuesday on a certain topic, for a particular reason. And then you give an instruction to a language model saying, you modify this to take into account the following. And it happened on Monday, and it also included language models. So then typically you should get an output like, on a Monday, we attended a talk on how we can leverage machine learning and language models for practice. So it included, what you wanted it to include. So by the same logic, you can do the same with, say, legal editing. So you are performing a certain role. You say that I'm a lawyer, and this is the instruction that I've received, and this is the draft, and here you are, make changes. One thing to remember is, if drafts are very large, it will not work, because like we earlier discussed, language models struggle with large amounts of text. Either there'll be inaccuracy, or it won't accept that many tokens, or it'll do something funny where it's not required. So one of the way to fix this is to focus on the parts of the text that you need changed, because with small number of tokens and smaller paragraphs of text, it works better. So one thing is to identify, say, parts of the template which are more accessible to modify, easier for the language model to deal with. And then sort of think about how to construct a legal document following on from this logic. So in terms of the editing aspect, we have built an editor in our app, which is a sort of focused legal editor. So what is happening in the background here, basically, it has the context of the fact that you're editing legal documents. It also sort of we have sort of worked on the prompts and kept modifying it until we are able to see it do a lot of editing things accurately. So for example, and I'm showing you how this editor works. And again, this editor is like a box of chocolates. There's so many things you can do with it. You can discover new use cases which even we are not aware of today, because editing is a very wide ranging exercise. So for example, here there's a clause which is an indemnity clause, and it's a very standard sort of indemnity clause in some, buyer-seller transaction where somebody's buying something, somebody's selling something. And it could be, shares, it could be goods, whatever it is. And you have this clause, this indemnity clause. And your context is you are working on an investment agreement where, somebody is investing in your company and you are representing that person. I mean, you are investing the person investing in a company, and you want to have an indemnity clause in favor of the investor. So this is the clause that you have. It's not really relevant for your transaction. And you sort of put this instruction. You say, hey, I just want this to be an investor who is getting the indemnity, and it should be favorable to the investor. Do it, and here I'm not even using like the latest model. I'm using 3.5, which is a lesser model. And let's see what it does with this. And I will also show another use case after this, which is different from this one. And this is a lot of fun in many different situations. This is actually, in my view, the building block of how you, make AI useful for your work. Because what you're essentially working with here is your own template text. So if you see here now, it has retained whatever it can retain. And here it is seller providing the investor with an indemnity, the seller being the company. And then, you have that change of context, and you will see that, suddenly there is a lot of elaboration here because, it is in favor of your party. So this is one way in which, this functions. We could try it with the other model. And one thing you will notice is in a lot of the generative AI use cases where we are drafting something from, using the other scripters like the service agreement, one that we saw, we are seeing nowadays that, GPT's 3.5 model works really well. However, where it includes some amount of logic, some amount of thinking through, like, for example, in this context, where we're giving it instructions to change language, even the latest model might be a good option. So what we have done now is we are allowing anybody who's using this to just use whatever they like, so that they can figure out what is working well, given the kind of problem that they're solving. Here we will see that, in fact, it has gone one step further. It has replaced the word seller with the company in GPT-4. It has not. It has completely contextualized this into the transaction that you are looking at, which is a company issuing to investors. And if you read this clause, it is more sort of well structured, concise, something more like what you will see. There is also the elaboration where, which is very important in this kind of a clause, that, you are liable. So this is one kind of a thing that you can do, which is, just modifying your template text based on a certain new context. Now let me show you another thing that you could potentially do, which is, you could take, say, for example, a paragraph. I'm taking a whole, sort of paragraph full of legalese here, and I will explain to you what we are doing here. So, there's this whole paragraph, there's a whole bunch of text. Say, you found this in some other agreement. You're sort of looking at some other contract, and you want to take some provisions from there and put it in your contract. And then what happens is there's a whole bunch of defined terms in that contract. And these are not defined properly in that contract, for example. And you know that these defined terms need to be defined in your contract. You are importing this language. So you can, for example, say extract all the terms in double quotes, which are capitalized, and make a definitions list out of them, ready to be imported into the definitions clause. So the person who discovered this is the youngest lawyer in my team, because this is the kind of work that youngest lawyers in the team hate, and we used to hate. So he's found this little hack, and when you do this, what happens? Let's see. We'll do this with GPT-4. So one of the things with language models is once you start discovering which side you need to go in terms of discovering use cases, it is a box of chocolates. You will find new ways to use it, new ways to make your life efficient. Beating the path, I would say every time you're doing something in drafting or review, you should think about, okay, how will a language model maybe make my life more, simpler. So here it has nicely taken out all the, defined terms. It's created some definition for them. Condition precedent means this. Alternative transaction means this. Blah blah blah. So this is a hack, uh, and it is so beautiful because then you just take this and you plug it in. And a lot of these definitions that we have been reading, these definitions make sense in the context that you have given, because it's looking at all this language, it's sort of figuring out the context, because it's a language model. It knows what is adjacent to this, and it knows that, oh, this looks like investment agreements that I've read in the past. So let me look at what kind of definitions typically are included for these terms, and what have I seen, and that's the prediction model that works. So this is how you would possibly look at editing template text. Uh, Going back to our conversation around how could then you use AI in a very customized template format. Um, I have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so I'm hoping to conclude. Uh, this is the last demonstration, and then I'll sort of wind up with where we can look uh, going forward. So typically, if you have a more sort of elaborate template, what it would look like is this. You would have a template which is sort of your template, and you would have certain inputs that you feel are important in each task or each document generation task that you have. And then you have these prompts which we spoke about, which need to be designed for those parts of the document in that template where things need to change. For example, what we discussed, the indemnity, or maybe there's a dispute resolution clause, and your standard dispute resolution clause says one arbitrator, and in this case you want three arbitrators. So those parts of the language might change, and therefore they might go to the language model, and certain parts might not. So combining your template, the editing function, and also generative functions to the extent required, bringing this together is how you then sort of generate a final draft with minimal text inputs as possible. And optimizing this is a little bit of an art, but over a period of time it becomes very simple. That, okay, these are the 4 or 5 variations. I'm going to have a way to put in those variations, and when I do that, everywhere in the draft things need to change in a certain way. So that is potentially the way for anybody to sort of work with their own templates and still leverage language models. And if you were to ask me what is the difference between what we used to do, we used to have a template, we would sit and we would fill it in, or we would change it a little bit here and there. There are differences. The difference being that here you are bringing an additional layer of prompts which make it easier for you to generate the draft each time without running through it from end to end each time. But at the same time, there are some things that don't change. For example, what doesn't change is your templates might need to be updated now and then based on the legal regulatory changes. I don't see a language model anytime in the future being capable of coming and changing templates automatically based on a change in law. Either there has to be a database that you're maintaining, it has to have some context how to change it's complex. So one thing that for the near future we will be doing is we'll have to modify our own templates, we'll have to update them, we'll have to keep in touch with the law and ensure that that knowledge is coming into them. And where there needs to be some external injection of research or knowledge into templates, that might still be necessary. The other things that don't change is that you will still have to read everything. See, this last part, which is so important, reading every word, does not change. Because previously you might have been working with your own template, a human being might have gone through every line and drafted it. You still had to look at it before it goes out. I don't think AI means that will change. Yes, you might be more confident. You might decide to, you might, be able to review it faster and have more confidence in what is going out, and therefore do it quickly. but there will always be scope for ensuring that you're careful about what AI is generating, whether it is consistent with broadly what you're looking at. So this is, sort of things to keep in mind. Some things change, some things don't. But at the same time, I think the major change would be in terms of speed and cost. That is what I feel, making it more convenient, easier for you, letting you focus on things that are not grunge work. Some small one instruction from a client and the whole set of documents need to change. And you are spending day and night and all nighters trying to, make those grunge changes. Those things become easier. Um, and I'm moving on to the last, bit. And of course, this is a very controversial topic. Many people are building many different things in the world, and there's a lot of excitement and a lot of optimism. Things that were impossible 1 year ago are possible today. So you need to bring a lot of modesty in this line of work. But in terms of what are more easier to solve problems today, drafting, formatting, iteration definitely is, right up there. If you have simple chain of thought analysis and agent problems, you could sort of try to crack those. Simple agent analysis problem could be something like, you say, you give it context, you say under section so and so of the Income Tax Act, this needs to be, complied with XYZ. And then you say, okay, only this has been complied with, and generate a conclusion. So that's the simple thought analysis, agent problem, chain of thought analysis. But you can think through this and leverage on this to get more efficiency, put fewer inputs, and get to a place where you need to be. This has started people have started looking at this as a way to solve. Focused review of documents, where you're very clear on what you need to review for, it can work. We have noticed that, if there are very specific things that you're looking at that you need to look for in a document, you want to evaluate a document on a certain criteria. Does it have this concept or not? Is it covering this or not? And, the document is not very long. You do tend to get results. The old use case of summarization, note taking, of course, is there. I would not, summarization has not really been a big success in text for AI, because summarization itself is a very complicated thing. You need to tell a story, and language models don't tell a story, they summarize. So it might not really, the results have been mixed. There are situations where it's working fine, situations where it's not. And of course, the other last 5 and 6 are things that are well known across all industries, not just say professional work like consulting, legal, finance, but also across other industries like sales, marketing. Building basic chatbots, having some kind of process in terms of how you communicate, auditing communications. So these are things that are happening, because where the amount of text you need to analyze is small, you can do a lot. So, when you're chatting with somebody, and analyzing that chat for a language model is easier, because it works well with small pieces of text. So these are things that, we have opportunity to leverage. After this talk, I will share some reference materials if you're more interested in digging deep into this topic. I will share this slide, which has quite a bit of, context in terms of what we spoke about here. If you want to follow our work, I write this Future of the Law, which is my blog, and lots of people love reading and commenting, and I write controversial sometimes stuff. So please follow, and that also means that you'll be on my mailing list. And also, we have built tipsytom.com, which is the legal AI assistant that we have built and which I showed you. And we have a free plan where you can generate a couple of kinds of documents, as many as you like. We have a paid plan where we charge 4,000 a month, and you can use everything unlimited. So that is how we have sort of priced it, so that people who want to learn can use it to learn also. And you can of course email me, it's on the screen. So with this, I will conclude, and hand over to the other panelists and also your questions. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if there's any other ways and any based on your questions, of course, I can come back to you again. Shweta, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can open up for questions, I feel.
Yeah. So members, if they have any questions, they can put it into the question answers box में. आप can you see that, Suha? In question answers?
Yes.
Okay. So do I need to read it, or you can see the questions or something?
Yeah, I can run through them. Yes.
Okay, fine.
So the first question is, can you create a one-page summary out of a research report? The answer is yes, you can, but will it suit your purpose? We have got very mixed results. In fact, we don't even have enough confidence to put it as a simple white labeled thing on our website, because we have not been very happy with the results we are getting. See, one of the things with summarization is, each time you summarize, and I'm speaking from my wearing my lawyer hat, is that summarization has to have some objective, and without that objective, the summarization might just sort of gloss over things and might not be meaningful. At the same time, if we are able to design prompts and have those guardrails and they work for summarization, I'm very interested. But so far I have seen mixed results. And especially the other reason why it's mixed results is because language models struggle with large amounts of text. See, it can summarize a one pager very well, but if you ask a language model to summarize, see, it can only handle so many tokens. So we're talking about, okay, it can take maybe 10 pages. The 3.5, the smallest, smallest of the large language models can take 10 pages. The largest model can take maybe 50 pages. But we have noticed that 50 pages with, it's called large context GPT-4, isn't, as effective as with smaller amounts of text. The other way to do it is you split up the report into multiple parts and ask it to summarize parts. That can also work, but again, mixed results. So um, so that is my view on this. But again, like I said, things change very fast. People might find ways to make a language model work well with their summarization tasks, and I'm always interested. Moving to the next one, is it your proprietary software? Only inputs are yours. Okay. Tipsy Tom is our proprietary software in terms of the software, but what we do is the input, whatever you do and you generate, is yours. So we don't access that. We don't. We have no way of getting into that. That data is yours. So we institute a wall. One of the reasons is we work with legal firms and professional firms, and for them it's very important that there is this wall between their data and us. And in some cases also, they like to have their data on their thing. So this can work irrespective of, it doesn't need to have your data to work, if that is the question. And at the same time, even though proprietary, pretty much I have shown you on this call how our service agreement, for example, works. And a lot of the other things follow the same logic. Which is why while the standard drafts can be used in pretty standard use cases where you are relying on your own templates, I think there is scope for being more specific in terms of, and we also help people build these templates in terms of templatization. There are people who do it in-house as well. The next question is how, as a practicing CA, how do I use this for repetitive letter or response to show cause notices? Yes, this is a very good question. So in your response to show cause notices, there are certain things where you might be referring to a provision of law. For example, you might say under section so and so, this is not valid, or this needs to be there and this is not there. So those things are things that you need to bring into the prompt, that knowledge. But otherwise, I think there is a lot of scope to templatize that, because a lot of things will be just, each time you insert certain facts, otherwise it's following a certain logic and format. So it is actually a good use case. At the same time, how repetitive is it? See, a lot of times things can be each time very different. In each time very different, I have to type all the facts, I have to bring in all the context each time. Then you might not see so much value. But where you know that, okay, there are a bunch of things that remain the same, some things change, and because of that, some things, sometimes the whole draft changes, but only some things change. Fundamentally, conceptually, it's the same. I think it's possible to do. To begin with experimenting, the next question is to begin with experimenting our prompts for drafting, which websites are what type of packages? See, just to experiment on drafting, you can access, just to see how prompts work. I think you should use OpenAI's Playground, where you are typing the prompt, like how we have sort of created a prompt. Where you are working with large and complex documents, or you need to templatize based on your form. Currently you will need somebody like us or somebody in the industry, AI industry, who can help figure out how to make your own template work for you. But where it concerns you figuring out how will a prompt work, how do I sort of uh, how, to what extent I can sort of experiment with AI, I think you can use OpenAI's Playground. It's a great way to experiment and learn about how this sort of works. So of course, multiple levels, and our product is also educational in a sense, in a very channelized way for use cases where you're doing legal drafting, legal review, and where you want to rely on legal, already the knowledge injection, without having to do it each time. But it depends on your context. So there are use cases where that knowledge injection is very important, your own, as opposed to something. And what we have done is also, as you can notice, there are all things where broadly the whole world agrees how they should look like service agreement, supply agreement, NDA, things where there is agreement on these templates broadly. People don't have so much of a disagreement on how they should look like. We have included those, which are the meat of our product, where anybody can, from anywhere, can use it. At the same time, we also have this thing where we offer a customized template, which is for people who want a customized template, where we work with their tools. The next question is whether this can be used for drafting of submissions for scrutiny and appeal representation. It depends on how much, again, like I said, in litigation, what we have noticed is where you need to extensively recount the facts, it might not reduce your work that much. But if your petitions or applications are similar each time, they are going through the similar things. For example, a bail application. A bail application is a very good example of something that can be automated using AI. Because a bail application looks pretty much the same every time. And, but your appeal, if it is on matters of law, might look different every time. However, in your scrutiny, if you're defending it in 4, 5, 6 different ways only, then it might be possible. So it depends on how what your use cases are. And it's connected to the next point. Can Dipsy-Tom be used to generate pleadings? We haven't yet introduced what we call a scripter for pleadings, and we're thinking about it. One of the things that held us back is there's a whole wide variety of formats, and pleadings, the formats are very important. So currently we have been building this with some of our clients, like specific kind of pleadings, specific kind of applications, petitions. But in a wide ranging way, we have not tried to get into it, because again, I hope that I hope I'm wrong, but there is a wide each court, each tribunal, each context has its own kind of format. And like I said, in language models, this whole format is a very important question. Yeah, and the last question, plan. I mentioned the plan price. It is 4,000 a month for everything, unlimited, use as much as you want, all the scripters, whatever we put in you. That is how we have sort of priced it. It costs us money to make those calls to GPT-4, which is a fairly expensive model. But we have also made it unlimited because a lot of people who use our product are also experimenting that, trying to figure out new use cases. So we don't want to limit what, sort of put a meter on how much people are using it. But this might change if, in the future, because the next question is I'm wondering when can ChatGPT or other AI tools take input from Excel or PDF, analyze documents, list down possible questions, and draft possible. Today, I don't think this is from end to end possible, because this analyze documents, financials, ITRs is the part where I think it will be challenging, because language models are not good at analyzing things, and especially numbers, by the way. GPT-4 is now claiming, OpenAI claims that GPT-4 is decent with numbers now, but it makes embarrassing mistakes with numbers. That's what we have noticed. So I'm scared of going anywhere near language models where it concerns adding numbers, reflecting numbers correctly, and also analyzing something. For example, analyzing a fact situation, whether it falls under a certain section. Not very confident about this. There are situations where it works, it's hit or miss. Depends a lot on how you write it and stuff like that. I would break this problem down. I would say, you know, drafting the response is where you try to start solving the problem, and work backwards to see how you can simplify the knowledge that you're injecting into it. In the very beginning of the call, Arpit had mentioned, creating an SQL, a database of your laws and your sections. There are ways to maybe use that approach, but I haven't seen anybody do it well yet, because language models are very bad at reading external information, making sense of it, analyzing it, applying it to facts. They're not that intelligent yet, and even though they might do it maybe 3 or 4 out of 10 times, it is a stroke of luck, I would say, rather than, it's a hit or miss. So you don't know where it's going to, you will still have to read it, you might have to read it. So that is my answer to this. But things might change very quickly. Maybe in 6 months, 1 year, we might have things where, we have figured out a way to make language models work with, external data or analyze things better. But then, I would feel very threatened as a lawyer if, that day comes. Because that then we wouldn't need need any lawyers in the world if we could do this end to end. Now the next question is around, do lawyers and judges use generative AI in writing awards and orders? So 2 months ago, somebody reached out to me from they working with the government of India, and they said, you have been doing this work in generative AI. We are having this unique problem. We have discovered that certain arbitrators and certain judges have used this chat GPT to write judgments, and we are getting scared. What do we do? So I, I hate it if it is happening. I hope it is not happening, because judgments are about analysis. They are not really so much about replicating language or making something, based on certain guardrails and templates. It's not a templatized. So I'm really scared if they're doing it based on today's technology. However, for drafting, in terms of purely editing, review, drafting, if they're using it, that's a different matter. But if they're using it to figure out how they need to decide a case or what case law needs to be referred to, that would be very dangerous. The next one around pleadings we have covered. No specific software is used by entire legal fraternity as of now to work with legal documents, except Microsoft Word. And we are hoping that our software is used by the whole legal fraternity after Microsoft Word. But currently, it's only Microsoft Word that I'm aware of that the whole legal fraternity uses. There is no AI tool that I'm aware of that the whole legal fraternity uses. The next question is, how does AI deal with tables and numbers and changes of them in any legal documents? Typically, we don't want AI to deal with it. We just want AI not to mess with it. So if we put the number, we want the number to remain the same when it comes out. But telling AI to add numbers, look at this tables is complicated. AI making, because it just accepts a string of text. It doesn't accept a table. So the moment there are tables, inputs, and all, this gets complicated. So right now, no, at least not the large language models. And language models itself are not designed for numbers. Even the small ones are not designed for numbers. They try to guess what is next. So if you say 2 plus 2 equals, they might say 4, but they might also have read somewhere that 2 plus 2 equals 1. And 1 out of 10 times, they might remember the time when they write 2 plus 2 equals 1. So that is the issue. And What is repetitive and recurring AI could be useful? Okay, that is the next question. And rough commercials, like I mentioned, commercials are just a monthly subscription that we're charging, right? We are not, a very simplified thing right now. And yeah, that I think covers all the questions. Are there any other questions that you guys have?
No, I think nothing is there in the chat box. Only I can see in the question answer.
Yes.
What are the rough commercial for use? And I think you have covered this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I think, we run through everything.
Okay. So, well, really, it was wonderful session, Suhas. A lot of new things even for me also. And I'm sure our participant must have benefited from this knowledge. So really, thank you. Thank you so much for your sparing valuable time and your sharing your knowledge with all of us. So if nothing is there, can we close the session or?
Done from my side. Other panelists, if any.
So
I'm here.
We can close, Shweta. We can close.
Okay. So I was just going through the question answers if anything is posted recently or what.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing is there. So, okay. Well, thank you so much once again. All the participants, thank you for joining us today. Thanks. So we are closing the session.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you.